The bullet left the barrel at 2,800 feet per second. In the fraction of a moment between the trigger pull and the impact, a span of time so brief it barely registered as time at all, 32 people held their breath. The target was a steel silhouette, man-sized, 1,000 yards downrange. At this distance, it was barely visible to the naked eye, a dark smudge against the brown hillside backdrop of the police academy's advanced marksmanship range. The woman behind the rifle didn't move, didn't breathe, didn't blink. Her name was Captain Rachel Torres, though the ID badge clipped to her burgundy red polo shirt simply read, R. Torres, Firearms Instructor. She was 42 years old with dark hair pulled back in a tight bun and deep brown eyes that had seen things most people only experienced in nightmares. To the 32 police cadets standing behind her, young, cocky, and convinced that a woman couldn't teach them anything about shooting, she was a joke, a diversity hire, someone the academy brought in to check a box on a form. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The sharp crack of the rifle echoed across the range, followed immediately by the unmistakable ping of metal striking metal. 1,000 yards away, the steel target swung backward on its hinges. Dead center, first shot, perfect hit. The silence that followed was absolute. 8 hours earlier, Rachel stood in the parking lot of the Riverside County Police Academy, her hands wrapped around a paper cup of coffee that had gone cold 20 minutes ago. She'd been sitting in her truck since 5:30 a.m., watching the sunrise paint the California hills in shades of orange and gold, trying to convince herself that this was a good idea. It had been 3 years since she'd retired from the Army, 3 years since she'd walked away from Fort Benning, from the ranges, from the classrooms where she'd spent 15 years teaching soldiers how to put bullets exactly where they needed to go. She'd thought she was done with this life. But then the academy's director had called. They needed a new firearms instructor, someone with real experience, someone who'd actually been downrange. "We need the best," he'd said, "and your name keeps coming up." Rachel had almost said no. She'd built a quiet life. She worked part-time at a sporting goods store. She went hiking on weekends. She saw a therapist every Thursday to talk about the things she'd seen, the things she'd done. She'd earned her peace. But the director had said something that stuck with her. These kids need to learn from someone who's actually been in the shit, not someone who's only shot paper targets their whole life. So here she was. First day, new beginning. She took a sip of cold coffee, grimaced, and got out of the truck. The academy's main building was a sprawling concrete structure that looked like it had been built in the 1970s and never updated. Inside, the hallway smelled like floor wax and burnt coffee. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Rachel found the director's office on the second floor. Chief Frank Dennison was a barrel-chested man in his 60s with silver hair and the kind of handshake that tried to prove something. "Torres, good to see you. Ready for your first day?" "Ready as I'll ever be, sir." "Good. Your class is waiting at Range 3. 32 cadets. They just finished their basic firearms qualification yesterday. You're taking over their advanced marksmanship training." "Understood." Dennison leaned back in his chair, studying her. "I'm going to level with you, Rachel. Some of these kids, they're not going to make it easy. They're young. They think they know everything. And," he hesitated, "and they're going to have a problem with me being a woman." Rachel finished for him. Dennison looked uncomfortable. "I didn't say that." "You didn't have to." Rachel stood. "It's fine, sir. I've dealt with worse." "I'm sure you have." Dennison handed her a folder. "That's your curriculum. But honestly, teach them however you think is best. You've got more real-world experience than anyone else on staff." Rachel took the folder. "Thank you, sir." As she turned to leave, Dennison called out, "Rachel, don't let them push you around. You earned your place here." She nodded and walked out. Range 3 was an outdoor facility, a long stretch of dirt and grass with shooting stations spaced every 10 feet. At the far end, 200 yards away, were the standard paper targets. Beyond that, at various distances, were steel plates and silhouettes. 32 cadets stood in loose formation near the shooting stations. All men, ages ranging from early 20s to mid-30s. Some had prior military experience. You could tell by the way they stood, the way they carried themselves. Others were fresh academy recruits with police academy haircuts and nervous energy. Rachel approached with her folder under one arm, her burgundy polo tucked neatly into her tactical pants. She looked professional, composed, unremarkable. The cadets noticed her. A few elbowed each other. Whispers started. "Who's that?" "New instructor, I think." "That's the firearms instructor?" "She looks like a soccer mom." Quiet laughter. Rachel stopped in front of the formation, set down her folder, looked at them. "Good morning. I'm Instructor Torres. I'll be handling your advanced marksmanship training for the next 8 weeks." Silence. Then one of the cadets, a broad-shouldered man in his late 20s with a crew cut, spoke up. "Ma'am, no disrespect, but what are your qualifications?" Rachel's expression didn't change. "I spent 15 years as a firearms instructor in the U.S. Army. I trained infantry, special operations, and law enforcement personnel in precision shooting techniques." "So you've never been in combat?" another cadet asked. "You've just, trained people?" "I didn't say that, but you didn't answer the question." Rachel looked at him, really looked at him, saw the skepticism, the doubt, the assumption that because she was a woman, she must be less capable. She'd seen it 1,000 times before. "Cadet, what's your name?" "Briggs, ma'am." "Cadet Briggs, are you here to question my qualifications, or are you here to learn?" "I'm here to learn, ma'am." "But I think we all want to know that our instructor has actual experience, not just classroom time." Murmurs of agreement from the other cadets. Rachel nodded slowly. "Fair enough." She walked over to the equipment lockers and pulled out a rifle, a Remington 700 chambered in .308 Winchester. Standard police sniper rifle. She checked it methodically, magazine, chamber, scope, her movements smooth and automatic. The cadets watched, some amused, some curious. "Here's what we're going to do," Rachel said. "I'm going to take one shot. If I hit the target, you give me your full attention and respect for the next 8 weeks. If I miss, I'll request a transfer and you can get a different instructor. Deal?" The cadets exchanged glances. A few grinned. "Deal," Briggs said. "But just to make it fair." "Which target?" Rachel pointed downrange. "Not to the 200-yard paper targets, not to the 500-yard steel plates, to the 1,000-yard steel silhouette at the very end of the range. A target designed for advanced sniper training, a target most of these cadets had never even attempted." "That one," Rachel said. The grins faded. "Ma'am, that's 1,000 yards. Even with a scope, that's an extremely difficult shot. Wind, elevation, temperature." "I'm aware," Rachel said calmly. She moved to the firing line, dropped into a prone position, and settled the rifle into her shoulder. The cadets gathered behind her, watching now with genuine interest. Rachel's breathing slowed. Her heart rate dropped. Everything around her, the whispers, the wind, the distant sound of traffic from the highway, faded into background noise. This was the place she'd spent years learning to find, the space between heartbeats, the moment of absolute stillness. Afghanistan, 2009. A ridge overlooking a valley where her patrol was pinned down. Enemy fighters 400 meters away. Her spotter beside her, calling adjustments. "Wind 3 knots from the east. Elevation +2 mils." Rachel adjusted, breathed, fired, target down. "Good shot, Redline." The memory dissolved. Rachel refocused on the present, adjusted for wind, compensated for distance, and fired. The rifle kicked against her shoulder. The sound echoed across the range. For a moment, less than 2 seconds, but feeling like an eternity, nothing happened. Then the distant ping of metal on metal. The 1,000-yard target swung backward, dead center. Rachel stood, safed the rifle, and turned to face the cadets. Their expressions had changed completely. The skepticism was gone. In its place was shock, awe, respect. "Any more questions about my qualifications?" Rachel asked quietly. Silence. "Good. Let's get to work." Week 1. The first week was brutal, not because of the physical demands, but because Rachel was dismantling everything the cadets thought they knew about shooting. Forget what you learned in basic, she told them on day 2. You've been taught to shoot targets that don't shoot back. That's not reality. In reality, your hands will shake. Your vision will narrow. Your fine motor skills will deteriorate. You need to train for stress, not comfort. She ran them through drills, shooting after sprinting, shooting with their weak hand, shooting from awkward positions, kneeling, sitting, prone at odd angles. Some of them complained. Briggs especially seemed to take everything personally. This isn't how we were trained, he said after a particularly difficult exercise. I know, Rachel said. That's why I'm retraining you. With all due respect, ma'am, we passed our qualifications. We know how to shoot. Rachel looked at him. Cadet Briggs, how many gunfights have you been in? None, ma'am. I just graduated from the academy. Exactly. You know how to shoot paper. I'm teaching you how to shoot when someone is shooting back. Briggs fell silent, but that night Rachel overheard him talking to another cadet in the parking lot. I don't care what she says. This is overkill. We're not going to war. We're going to be city cops. Rachel stood in the shadow of her truck, listening. Yeah, but did you see that shot she made? The other cadet said. 1,000 yards. First try. That's insane. Lucky shot, Briggs muttered. Rachel felt a familiar tightness in her chest. The same feeling she'd gotten in the Army whenever men dismissed her accomplishments as luck, as a fluke, as anything except skill. She walked to her truck without confronting them. She'd learned a long time ago that you couldn't argue someone into respecting you when you had to show them. Week 3. By the third week, the cadets had split into 2 groups. The first group, about 20 of them, had bought in completely. They asked questions, stayed late, practiced on their own time. They'd seen Rachel's skill day after day and realized they were learning from someone exceptional. The second group, led by Briggs, remained skeptical. They did the minimum, complained about the difficulty, questioned her methods. On Wednesday of week 3, Briggs made a mistake that almost got someone hurt. They were running a live-fire exercise, moving and shooting through a mock building. Briggs rushed his shot, didn't check his backdrop, and fired toward a target without realizing another cadet was in his line of fire. Rachel's voice cut through the range like a blade. Cease fire! Everything stopped. Rachel strode over to Briggs, her face hard as stone. Cadet Briggs, you just shot your partner. Explain. Briggs's face went pale. I didn't see him. I was focused on the target. You didn't see him because you weren't paying attention. You were rushing. You were thinking about the target instead of the environment. Ma'am, if this were real, you'd have killed a fellow officer. Do you understand that? Briggs looked at the ground. Yes, ma'am. Do you understand why I'm drilling you on situational awareness? On slowing down? On thinking before you shoot? Yes, ma'am. Rachel's voice softened slightly. Cadet Briggs, you're a good shooter. You have potential, but good shooting isn't enough. You need judgment. You need discipline. And you need to trust that I'm teaching you these things for a reason. Briggs looked up, his jaw tight. It's hard to trust someone when they won't even tell us their background. We don't know anything about you. You just showed up and started barking orders. Rachel stared at him for a long moment. Then she walked over to the equipment shed, unlocked it, and pulled out a framed photograph. It had been hanging on the wall inside, but none of the cadets had paid attention to it. She carried it back and held it up for everyone to see. The photograph showed a group of soldiers in desert camouflage. In the center, holding a rifle, was a younger version of Rachel. Behind her, a banner read, USAR MYSNIPERSCHOOL DISTINGUISHEDGRADUATE TWOTHOUSANDSIX. I graduated top of my class from Army Sniper School, Rachel said quietly. I served 3 combat deployments, 2 in Iraq, 1 in Afghanistan. I was a designated marksman with the 10th Mountain Division and later a sniper instructor at Fort Benning. She pointed to her chest where a small insignia was barely visible on her polo shirt. My call sign was Redline because when I took a shot, it was a red line. There was no coming back. The cadets stood in stunned silence. I've made over 300 combat shots, Rachel continued. I've trained over 2,000 soldiers, And I've seen what happens when people don't take this training seriously. She looked directly at Briggs. I've seen good people die because they rushed, because they didn't check their backdrop, because they thought they were too good to make mistakes. Her voice cracked slightly. So when I tell you to slow down, when I tell you to think, when I tell you to train like your life depends on it, it's because it does. She handed the photograph to Briggs. Now you know my background. Any more questions? Briggs looked at the photograph, then at Rachel. His skepticism had evaporated, replaced by something else. Shame, maybe, or respect. No, ma'am, he said quietly. Good. Let's run the drill again. Properly this time. Week 6, the transformation was remarkable. The cadets who had doubted her were now her most dedicated students. Briggs, in particular, had become a model trainee, focused, disciplined, humble. During a lunch break, he approached her. Ma'am, can I ask you something? Go ahead, cadet. Why did you leave the Army? If you were that good, why retire? Rachel was quiet for a long moment. Then she spoke, her voice soft. Because I was tired, Briggs. Tired of seeing people die. Tired of taking lives. Tired of carrying ghosts. Ghosts? Rachel looked out at the range. Every person I've killed I remember. Their faces, the way they fell. I know it was war. I know it was necessary. But that doesn't make it easy. Is that why you became an instructor? So you don't have to pull the trigger anymore? Partly, but mostly because I realized I could save more lives by teaching than by shooting. If I train you well, you'll make the right decisions. You'll go home to your families. You'll keep other people safe. She looked at him. That's worth more to me than any combat record. Briggs nodded slowly. Thank you, ma'am, for teaching us and for being honest. Thank you for listening. Week 8, final qualification. The final test was simple, a 1,000-yard shot, just like Rachel's first day. Each cadet got one attempt. Hit the target, pass the course, miss, retake the training. One by one, they took their shots. Some hit, some missed. Some came close. Briggs was the last. He'd been practicing every day, staying late at the range, obsessing over every detail. He settled into position, breathed, adjusted, fired. The bullet struck the target, not dead center, slightly left, but a hit. The range erupted in cheers. Briggs stood, grinning, and looked at Rachel. She nodded. Good shot, cadet. I learned from the best, ma'am. Epilogue. On the final day after the graduation ceremony, Briggs approached Rachel one last time. Ma'am, I owe you an apology for the first few weeks, for doubting you. Rachel shook her head. You don't owe me anything. You learned. That's all that matters. Still, I was wrong, and I'm grateful you didn't give up on us. Rachel smiled. Giving up isn't in my vocabulary, cadet. Briggs handed her something, a small challenge coin. On one side was the Police Academy logo. On the other, engraved in simple letters, Redline, the best instructor we never knew we needed. Rachel's eyes stung. She looked up at Briggs. The whole class chipped in, he said. We wanted you to know you made a difference. Rachel held the coin tight. Thank you. As she drove away from the academy that evening, the coin sat on her dashboard, catching the last rays of sunset. She'd spent years thinking her best days were behind her, that her skills were relics of a past life. But maybe, just maybe, her most important work was just beginning. Stories like Rachel Torres's remind us that the greatest teachers are often those who've walked the hardest roads. If you believe in honoring those who serve in silence, please like this video, share it, and subscribe to Veterans Past Stories. Thank you for watching.